Good morning to you for Telesur. I'm Reagan Devines in Caracas, Venezuela. Thank you so much for being here with us on From the South. We start at the Sustainable Development Summit held this weekend at the United Nations. 150 countries agreed on 17 new Sustainable Development Goals to replace the previous Millennium Development Goals, which came to an end in 2015. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, proposed a global debate to discuss these objectives in order to deepen the world's commitments. He suggested a particular country-wide initiative that would include generating employment, free and quality education, promoting scientific research, and increasing the well-being of children. Maduro also addressed the current refugee crisis in Europe, which he blamed on unjust wars of aggression.
The most tragic and painful mass migration known to humanity in the last 70 years of the United Nations that we are seeing right now in the Mediterranean and Europe. What is the cause of this mass migration of people fleeing from misery and pain? There is just one cause: unjust wars of aggression to try and conquer the entire people.
And Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa also approached migration during his speech at the summit and described the immigration policies carried out by developed countries as shameful. Ecuador is one of the largest receivers of refugees of all Latin American countries. Its human mobility laws do not discriminate against new arrivals to the country.
En este sentido, la paradoja inmoral
the immoral paradox that on one hand, the free movement of goods and capital in the search for the highest profitability is promoted, while on the other hand, the free movement of people looking for dignified work is penalized. It's simply intolerable and unsustainable from an ethical point of view. To the Ecuadorian government, illegal human beings do not exist, and the United Nations should insist upon this point. The migration policies of rich countries are truly shameful.
And regarding the climate-related goal, Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff pledged to decrease greenhouse gas emissions by 47% by the year 2030. Rousseff noted that her goals are more ambitious than those of most developed countries and assured that Brazil will not need external support to achieve them. She also reaffirmed her country's commitment to end illegal deforestation in the Amazon, but fell short of declaring a freeze on deforestation in general.
The upcoming Paris conference is a unique opportunity for us to build a joint common response to the global challenge of climate change. Brazil has made a major effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions without impairing our social and economic development and social inclusion.
Also at the UN summit, Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez announced that the body will open a human rights office in his country later this year. Violations of human rights have skyrocketed in Honduras since the coup that withdrew elected President Manuel Zelaya in 2009. According to President Hernandez, the office will monitor potential violations carried out by military forces during anti-drug operations. He defended that militarizing the country has helped to stop a bloodshed related to drug trafficking, despite the UN urging him to put a time limit on the military security activities. The military police force is set to expand by 40% this year, and the country's defense budget has been increased by 20%. Venezuela and Guyana have agreed to send their respective ambassadors back to their diplomatic missions. They had been recalled in relation to a border dispute between the two neighbor countries around the Essequibo region. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and Guyanese Head of State David Granger met in New York in the framework of the 70th Assembly General of the United Nations. The meeting was mediated by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Ban confirmed that the UN will send a technical committee to Venezuela in the coming days to assess its claim to the Essequibo region. The commission is being sent under the Geneva Agreement, and it will also set a deadline for resolving the conflict through regular channels.
The Secretary General has committed to, following that visit, study all the options given by the Geneva Agreement and Article 33 of the UN Charter.
Venezuela has insisted in stimulating all the good offices, which is the last consensus decision between Guyana, Venezuela, the Geneva Agreement and the Secretary General, to set a time limit and the good offices along with the good political and diplomatic channels for a final resolution.
After the historic agreement reached last Wednesday between the FARC and the Colombian government, the latter has said that a significant amount of international funds will be necessary to implement the deal. The Minister of Internal Revenue, Mauricio Cardenas, said that he hoped the international community will demonstrate support for the agreement. In his opinion, the peace deal will generate benefits abroad, including a potential reduction of drug trafficking. The minister added that he will issue a precise amount of funds needed within 6 months. According to the minister, Colombia has already spent about 1% of its gross domestic product, mostly on reparations to victims of the violence. And now we'll look at other stories making news around the globe.
Pro-independence parties in Catalonia won the regional elections on Sunday. Although they did not win the majority of the votes, the separatist parties had pledged a roadmap for independence within 18 months to get an absolute majority. Would give them the absolute majority, but the latter said they would not support the Together for Yes leader Artur Mas.
Hem guanyat, hemos ganado, we have won, nous avons gagné.
Pope Francis left the United States on Sunday night after nearly a week visit to the country. On his last day, the pontiff offered an open-air mass in Philadelphia in which he spoke again about family, poverty and immigration. Earlier, he met with victims of sex abuse committed by clergy and promised accountability for those crimes. He also spoke against death penalty before 71 prisoners at a correctional facility. Royal Dutch Shell has announced it is halting the controversial offshore exploration at Alaska's Arctic due to poor findings. The oil giant said that its Burger J well will be sealed and abandoned in accordance with U.S. regulations. Environmental groups oppose drilling in the Arctic as they claim it would lead to at least 5 degrees Celsius of warming by 2100. This would lead to catastrophic impact on humans and environment. The president of the Maldives came out unharmed of a blast on board his speedboat when he was returning from the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca. His wife and 2 aides were injured. The cause of the explosion is not clear. Clashes continue for a second day at Jerusalem's Alaska Mosque. Israeli security forces stormed the compound where some Palestinian worshippers were barricaded to defend the mosque during the 8-day Jewish festival of Sukkot. According to Israeli forces, some of them threw stones and fireworks at police border and police forces. Israel has imposed a ban on over 50 Muslims during the festival.
Baseball or softball, karate, skateboarding, sports climbing and surfing could be Olympic sports in Tokyo in 2020. The organizers have recommended these 5 sports to the International Olympic Committee, which has the last word. If approved, these would be 18 new medal events, 9 each for men and women, which will be contested by an extra 474 athletes. Olympic host cities can now bring in sports which are popular in their countries in order to boost ratings and attract greater sponsorship. Bowling, squash and wushu had also been shortlisted but were left off the final recommended list. And we leave you today with some amazing pictures of these supermoon eclipse that had people gazing into the sky across the world all night last night. The rare astronomical event of a supermoon combined with a lunar eclipse will not be repeated until the year 2033. The eclipse was visible from the Americas, Europe, Africa, West Asia, and the East Pacific. For more on these and other stories, please visit our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Regan Devines. We'll have another news brief for you at midday.